Hello everybody, welcome to another video from me, Reagan, your numbers witch here at Ollie's Accounting. I haven't been on in a while making YouTube content. I've just been reposting things over from TikTok because I've been very busy. I've been traveling a lot over the past couple of months. It's also a busy time of year. Even though I do not do tax returns, all of my clients have to do their taxes. And all of my clients are small business owners, which means the bookkeeping that we do together is what goes on their tax return. So yeah, I'm still kind of busy this time of year. I've got a lot of client projects, doing cleanups for them in QuickBooks Online. So that has pulled all of my time and attention, and I am excited to get back to creating content for YouTube, some longer form stuff. And today I have a very exciting video that I want to share with you, all about creative businesses and radical community building. So I recently went to the Gee's Bend quilt retreat in Jackson, Mississippi. And while we were there, my mom and I visited the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum and the Mississippi Museum of Art. So let's talk about why I consider this a business trip for me. Anytime that I get to talk about my business and do self-promotion is time well spent in growing my business, right? Because when you're meeting a whole new group of people, such as at the Gee's Bend quilt retreat, you are getting asked, and you are asking other people all the time, what is it that you do? Now, a lot of the ladies here were older than me and retirement age, so a lot of them were retired. But some of the folks there were still working, and we talked about what they did. Some of the folks owned like quilting stores or long arm service businesses, which is a machine that quilters use to machine quilt their quilts rather than using a sewing machine. So we all were asking each other what it is that we did. And obviously I got to tell folks that I'm self-employed and that I'm a bookkeeper and that I work with small businesses and that I teach people how to use QuickBooks Online. So I was talking about my business while I'm there, but I consider this retreat as yet one of a long list of retreats that I will be going to over my lifetime that are going to supplement and help me build my business brain. Many of my clients are creative business owners, and the more that I can network and build community with creative freelancers, the more that I become someone who can advise and lift up small businesses. It is not enough to know how to use QuickBooks Online and how to do bookkeeping for somebody's tax return. It is more beneficial that I understand how creative businesses work. I understand what my clients' brains are like when they're running a creative business. They're more of a creative person than like a numbers and math kind of person, and helping them elevate themselves, like helping them build a kind of business that is sustainable and that works for them and that also supports them financially. And it's so important that I get to meet creative business owners, that I get to talk to people who are creatives about their work, about how they sell their work. And that is what we were doing here at this retreat, aside from all of the beautiful quilting that everyone was doing. So we got to spend an entire 4 days with the creative women from Gee's Bend in Boykin, Alabama. China Petway and Marianne Petway are the two ladies that are coming to the retreats who are members of the Gee's Bend Quilt Collective. Marianne actually manages the collective over in Boykin. They have built up the quilt collective. They are artists in their community, and so they have created community and a very deep sense of community in Boykin, Alabama. And they get to also go around and show their quilts and their artwork nationally. And so it's really cool to get to talk to them about how this thing that everybody's grandma was doing back in the day out of necessity, because it didn't always used to be so commercial in America, in the United States, or anywhere in the world where you could just go to the store and buy what you needed. A lot of these women grew up with hardly anything, hardly food, which is one of the experiences that they described about their childhoods. And so they grew up seeing their mothers and grandmothers piecing together scraps from upholstery, from furniture, from clothing that was no longer good enough to be worn. They would piece together these quilt tops and then they would quilt them because you needed a blanket to sleep under. You needed something to rest your head on at night and keep warm. Out of this necessity, they've built up community and they have created truly stunning works of art. And because Gee's Bend describes a literal bend in a river where this community was situated, they were kind of geographically isolated. And so you have a lot of Black residents there who are descendants of the people who were enslaved at the Petway Plantation. So they have a tight sense of community. They have very similar styles of quilting and what materials they use to quilt, how they pieced them together. Going to this retreat was like going to hear about their experiences, hear about them as business women, and to hear about their lives and how quilting is a creative outlet, a necessity, and how they're continuing to teach, the younger generations how to do this as well, because these ladies had grandchildren who were quilting as well, and they were selling some of their works of art at the quilting retreat, and I think that is so special and amazing. So let's talk about what I learned aside from some quilting stuff. Like I said before, want this to be one of many kind of business-oriented retreats that I go to in my life and in my career. The more retreats you go to, the more you learn about what it takes to actually host a retreat. At least that's how I look at it, because I am a bookkeeper and a business finance person. So anytime I go to a business and the Quilt Collective and the retreat is a business in itself, I'm thinking about all the ways that it operates behind the scenes. Like, how do they take money? What do they spend money on? They had machine rentals for folks who were flying in to rent piecing machines so that you didn't have to carry your machine, although I did because I was only a 3-hour drive from Jackson, Mississippi. So we got to experience and kind of get a little bit of a behind the scenes about the retreats, creative retreats, working retreats, and how to exercise those community building muscles and those networking muscles. Because as somebody who loves to stay home and not leave her house, that's hardly something that I do anymore intentionally, is like getting out into the community and like intentionally networking. I have a lot of experience and a lot of education on how to do that, but it's good to just get out there and do it so that you can build up those muscles and exercise those muscles and keep yourself fresh in talking to other people and having conversations with other people. As a business owner, when you are selling your products or services to somebody, you're simply having a conversation. Do you want the thing that I'm selling? Yes or no? That's all the conversation is, right? So I learned a lot about how different people host retreats. I've been on business retreats before, and I've done podcast episodes about that. You can check out my podcast, Money Through Ease. So I also learned about being a creative business owner, and especially a businesswoman. Women-owned businesses, craft businesses, quilting, sewing, mending, and art are all seen as soft, and they are historically or have been done historically by women. These are all necessary parts of life too, right? Like I talked about, you need a blanket to sleep under and keep yourself warm at night. So the necessity was they learned how to quilt these blankets from materials that they had on hand, from scraps that were not being used anymore, in order to keep themselves warm. Also, mending clothing is a big skill to know, because if you don't have money to go out and buy new clothes, you end up just repairing the clothes that you do have whenever they get torn or damaged. Obviously, sewing your own clothes and stuff too. Any sort of craft businesses, cooking, cleaning businesses, like all of these are domestic types of labor. And so historically, and even now, those kinds of industries are dominated by women. And they are largely dominated by Black women. Black women have always been domestic laborers after enslavement. Like, people were still hiring Black women to come clean their homes, take care of their children, and doing all of that domesticated labor. So these are all necessary parts of life, right? But because we live in a white supremacist patriarchal system, of course, white men are the ones who we see more of in the spotlight. They see more of the spotlight. Their names are the common household names that we all talk about, right? Van Gogh. We also know that there's a huge wage gap that exists in all fields that is based on gender. So we know that women make less money than men in almost all industries, even when you adjust for things like education and experience, etc. But there is also especially a gap that is based on the construct of race. So Black women are making less per hour than white women for the same type of jobs with the same level of experience and education. Latina women, again, making even less. So not only is there a gender wage gap, there is a race wage gap, and all of these kinds of things pile on top of each other. That is what intersectional feminism is about. So the women of Gee's Bend who were working at something called the Freedom Quilting Bee were constructing garments, furniture, upholstery, and quilts for national department store brands. And then their work, which right now is being praised for its use of movement and color theory by the likes of Jane Fonda and purchased for 5 figures or more by U.S. senators, their work used to get turned away by those stores who were purchasing from the Freedom Quilting Bee. So there is a huge wage gap, and it is upon white people, it is upon us to deal with the racism of that, deal with the misogyny of that, and to pay Black women what they want to get paid, period. But really, to value Black women's art higher and to focus on the ways that the industry, the art industry, but every industry has subverted and oppressed Black women, Black people in this country. Making sure that we are focusing on being anti-racist, even in the creative business spaces, even in the artist spaces. When you're a creative business owner, you know how much time and materials and expertise goes into your craft, and you also know how quickly people can be to scoff at your pricing, or much less appreciate your work and curate it for themselves. So that was some of the discussion that we had over this long weekend quilting retreat, how a small, geographically and judicially segregated community became world-renowned because, parentheses, white people, but people finally decided to take notice and to start telling other people about it. So what else did we do while we were in Jackson? Well, my mom and I went to the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, which is in Jackson. And if you're in Jackson or anywhere, like if you're within a couple hours drive, you're gonna wanna go. It is free admission on Sundays, and if you're going to the Civil Rights Museum exhibits specifically, you're gonna want to prepare to spend several hours there because it is saturated with exhibits and things to read and listen to and experience, and it is a lot. It's just a lot to go through. There's no way you could speed run this exhibit at all. So give yourself plenty of time to really soak it all in, or go back multiple times if you need to and you're able to. It is rich with the history of the southeastern United States, and specifically with the history of formerly enslaved people and descendants of enslaved Africans who are continuing to fight for equity, justice, and freedom from oppression. And if you are seeing this video before May 18th, 2025, you should also head over to the Mississippi Museum of Art, where there is an exhibit called Of Salt and Spirit: Black Quilters in the American South. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from the brochure. Step into the world of quilting with Of Salt and Spirit: Black Quilters in the American South. Over the past 20 years, MMA, Mississippi Museum of Art, has amassed one of the largest quilt collections in the American South. This exhibition will feature more than 50 handmade and machine-stitched quilts from MMA's permanent collection, including those made by Crossroads Quilters, Gwendolyn McGee, and several collected by American photographer Roland L. Freeman and acquired by MMA in 2022. Curator Dr. Charbrion Plummer combines thorough research, innovative interpretation, and community engagement to form a cohesive, experiential study of American art through a Black feminist lens. Of Salt and Spirit seeks to illuminate the processes and practices of Black Southern quilters and demystify cultural narratives assigned to their artistry while celebrating the enduring impact of quilting on communities over generations. And the brochure features one of the quilts that is currently at the exhibit. Speaking of white supremacy and undervaluing the work of Black women artists in the South especially, when I was looking up driving directions to this museum, I came across this one-star Google review that has lived rent-free in my head since, for better or for worse. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how this review, left only a week before I went to the museum, underpins the entire through line of my experience in Jackson with the Gee's Bend Quilters, the Civil Rights Museum, and this Black Quilters exhibit. The review says, "I'm sorry, I really wanted to like this place. I love art museums and just museums in general. This place has great potential with a huge building and somewhat interesting courtyard, but unfortunately, those were the best things about it. We went in thinking it would be free or low cost, and it cost $15 each for my wife and I. Then we walked around and there was very little art, only a few blankets hung on the wall. Admittedly, they had a temporary blanket exhibit going in, but I thought they would have some interesting permanent exhibits as well. They didn't. It was a pretty disappointing visit. I'll include my favorite photo from this place. We had just come from the Eudora Wealthy House Museum and it was awesome. Skip this place and visit Eudora's home. If you visit on Wednesday, it's free also." Let's talk about what could have compelled this person and the other recent one-star reviewers to say such a thing. Because could it be that the exhibit in question is focused on Black artists, women artists, Southern U.S. artists, all of the above? Probably. That's a rhetorical fucking question. Describing the exhibit as blankets on the wall while ignoring the history and meaning behind the exhibit, which shows how the Black women of the South used their skills to craft beautiful items from scraps that would keep their family warm, safe, and protected. Yeah, this review had my ass itching, and it still does if we're going to be honest. I'll insert a couple of photos of the pieces in the exhibit so you can decide for yourself. What could have possessed these people, white people, to say these kinds of things? I'll give you a hint. It's white supremacy, obviously. Because, of course, if you're going to Jackson, Mississippi, one of the poorest and most uneducated states in the nation, you'd expect that a museum with the cultural artifacts and artwork from the people who descended from enslaved Africans in such a city would be free admission for you to waltz around and declare yourself better than. Nothing but the audacity of a white person could follow the impulse to post a single picture of a bland outdoor hallway instead of any of the museum's pieces to reflect what's in this reviewer's head: a lack of color, empathy, or interest. And with that, I'll leave you with this imperative: that we celebrate Black artists, Black women artists specifically, while they're here, as Marianne and China Petway insisted all throughout the weekend. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe and like this video. Let me know what you think about in the comments about all of this. And I'll see y'all soon.